Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina with a special live show tonight. We've got Jamin Vereen in studio tonight. How you doing, man?
Good, how you doing?
Doing well, man. And we're going to be talking something special tonight, a little bit about slow pitch jig fishing. So got some interesting information, and for those of you who don't know what slow pitch jig fishing is, tonight is the night. You're going to get a beginning anglers 101 course, because I don't know much about it either, and we're going to learn together tonight. And Jamin's been doing it for a while now, right?
Yep.
And he's been doing it quite a bit on a variety of different trips, on a variety of different depths. And he's going to impart some knowledge on us a little later in the show. But we're going to start just like we normally do, guys. We're going to show you what we've been catching, talk a little bit about the weather, show you some photos. We're just going to do it a little bit rushed, so we have more time at the end of the show to talk to our guest, Jamin, and to go into that slow pitch jig stuff. Because 2022 going to be special. We got some slow pitch jigging only trips scheduled, and we're going to be talking about that a little later in the show too. So branching out into new stuff in the new year, so stay tuned. It's going to be fun. All right, so with that, don't forget to comment where you're watching from, and appreciate everybody sending stars. Michael Siebert, I saw someone earlier send 1,000 stars when we were getting started. I missed that name, but I appreciate anybody who sent stars. Cheyenne Playsack, appreciate you as well. For those of you not watching on Facebook, stars are just a way for people watching on Facebook to kind of show their support, and makes it more possible to do cool stuff like this. Paul Carteau, appreciate you, man. Mike Hart, thanks, buddy. And Ralph, what's going on, man? Thanks for watching from Palmetto. Tammy Davis from Angola, Indiana, the Great White North. Hope you're staying warm. Scott Shepler from Woodstock, Georgia. How are you, man? Randy Hunter from Chiefland. What's going on, dude? Jennifer Widener. Look forward to seeing you after Christmas. All right, so also don't forget to comment where you're watching from. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you give the video a like, share it with your favorite fishing club or fishing group, or on your timeline, or all three. And then if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. If you're watching on Instagram, don't forget, if you're watching on the Instagram app, you're only going to see the very middle of the screen. If you go to Instagram.com, log in through the website, then you can turn your phone sideways. You'll be able to see the whole screen and be able to watch the show in the right aspect ratio. So keep that in mind as well. I also want to give a shout out to Gator Gyms. This live show and all our live shows are brought to you by our good friends at Gator Gyms Tackle, 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. Check them out, and if you bring a young angler with you and tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you, they'll give you a free gift for the young angler in your group. So make sure you stop on down, tell them Hubbard's Marina sent you. I appreciate it. Robert Holshauser for those 1,000 stars, man. Thank you so much. If you want a free fishing trip tonight, we're going to be giving away tons of free fishing trips. Don't forget to at least comment one time. You can comment anything you want one time on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. So you got to go to facebook.com, find Hubbard's Marina, comment one time. That enters you for a chance to win those free trips. Now, let's get into what we're seeing inshore, seeing what we're catching, and we'll work through our photos real quick, and then we will get into what we're seeing near shore and the weather, and then we'll get into talking to Jamin a little bit about slow pitch jig fishing. Been seeing a lot of those sheep's head showing up, still some mangrove snapper around late in the year, but water is allowing those mangrove snapper to stick around. Hasn't cooled off too much. We had a long stretch of warm weather, and that water temperature is just perfect right now. Some big redfish around those mangrove shorelines, the residential dock lines, a lot of mullet moving around. The redfish are following those schools of mullet too. A lot of bait, a lot of fry bait, so you got to match the hatch, use a little smaller jig. A lot of sheep's head around the structures, the passes, the rock piles, bridges, all good areas to target them. Snook bite's been a little tough. with that long stretch of warmer weather and calm conditions. Water got really clear. They got a little finicky and a little leader shy, but they've picked up quite a bit the last few days, and next week's little disturbance should get them even more excited. So snook bite's going well right now. Hasn't been too great, but it's definitely picking up, and we're hoping that continues. And that's about it inshore, and we'll work our way offshore and show you what we're seeing offshore as well. So let's see here. Our nearshore picks, we're definitely seeing a lot of those hogfish. The hogfish bite's been going really, really well nearshore on our 10-hour trips, 5-hour half days. Have you ever caught a hogfish on a slow pitch jig?
I have not.
Not? Yeah, they're leader shy, so I'd imagine you probably would struggle to catch one of these guys on one of those slow pitch jigs.
Not my recommendation.
Still going shrimp for hogfish.
Still going shrimp, yeah.
All right. Could you tip a slow pitch jig with shrimp?
I haven't, but I'm pretty sure you could.
That's something to try. Maybe we can. Maybe we'll be the first to target hogfish with slow pitch jigs. The red grouper, we're excited about that. This is included in the report tonight because they reopen January 1st. A lot of people are like, well, after January 1st, gag grouper closes, and without grouper open, I'm not going fishing. Scamp grouper, red grouper, strawberry grouper. There's a ton of grouper species out there that are still open after December 31st, and we're really excited to go back a little deeper and target these red grouper and big fat scamp grouper after January 1st. The big gags, though, are still around. Look at that sucker, man. That was a monster. They did pretty good on this last 39-hour trip. It was a midweek trip. They caught a little more than 24 keeper gag grouper. Bite was a little picky, a little slow. We got a steady mangrove bite, but we got to one stop in a little bit deeper water and caught about 18 keeper gags in one stop. And that was towards the end of the day. And we're going to start in that area on this next 39-hour and hopefully really dial in on them. But the big scamp were there, and definite. Oh, your dad said he caught a hogfish on slow pitch jigging. All right, so it can be done. It can be done. It's happened. So there you go. Slow pitch jigs do catch hogfish. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to perfect that a little bit. And look at that scamp. Yeah. Beautiful scamp grouper. Now, Rich Golis, Captain Rich Golis, who runs a lot of our Flying Hub 2 trips, also fishes a 39-hour quite often when he's not working. And he slow pitch jig fishes quite a bit. And that was my first question when I saw this scamp. I was like, dude, you get that on a jig? He was like, no, I was using dead bait. Yeah. Unfortunately. But scamp are one of the fish, in my opinion, that if I was out there and scamp were coming up, it's either a small pinfish or I'm fishing for mangroves and I catch one, or you catch them using that diamond jig, that 6-ounce silver hammered diamond jig or gold hammered diamond jig, like 4 to 6 ounces, just on a normal rod and reel. I've caught quite a few scamp, and I saw Captain Garrett. We were on a private charter, and I caught 1 or 2 scamps. I was killing the mangroves. We were on a really good stop. Bite was really good. He walks up next to me with one of those 6-ounce hammered diamond jigs, bangs out like 8 scamp. Really? Just one after another, after another, after another. I was like, holy heck, man. It definitely works for those scamps. So they are one of the fish that, in my opinion, love jigs. No matter if it's a slow pitch or a fast drop, if they're aggressive, they're going to eat. And we've been doing well on the gag grouper out there in deeper water, just kind of hit and miss a little bit in different areas, and the longer fishing time gives us more time to really dial in on them. But the hogfish have been steady on the day trips, 5 and 10 hours. We've been doing real well on the hogfish, and we're excited. Those hogfish should continue all the way through March into April, depending on weather. So we got a lot of time to dial in on those hogfish for sure. So been catching them really well, and we're hopefully going to keep catching them really well all the way through this coming spring. So great time to get out, target those hogfish. Weather-wise, today and into tomorrow is the best weather. we're going to get into the weather real quick, show you a brief little weather snippet, and then we're going to get into some slow pitch jig fishing talk. So if you go to hubbardsmarina.com, click fishing trips, scroll down to weather links, that'll bring you to this page. We're going to start with that 5 and 10 hour forecast area, the Egmont Key Buoy. It's about 16 miles offshore, and I always like just visually looking at this graph, and this is basically the best case scenario. We don't like bad weather. Obviously, bad weather is not optimal if you have trips planned, but you need bad weather, right? Yeah. Bad weather gets things moving, gets things stirred up, and gets those gag grouper excited. So this little cold front coming will bring that water temperature back down a little bit, get those fish moving, things turned over, and should really re-excite that nearshore and offshore fishery. So we have a little cold front coming through there Tuesday. Looks like Tuesday early morning is when we're going to see the bulk of the rain chance. And then around midday, the bulk of the wind. And then it should be kind of calming down through Tuesday night, through Wednesday, and really getting nice again Thursday. Friday, Christmas Eve is gorgeous. Over the Christmas weekend is absolutely spectacular. And then this worries me a little bit. This is very far advanced forecast, but Tuesday, December 28th, wind shifts out of the south. When the wind shifts out of the south like this in an advanced forecast, typically that's kind of predetermining that there's a front incoming, sucking that wind up from the south towards that frontal boundary. So hopefully the next day or two we don't see that big front forecasted in that 10-day forecast range. But keep in mind, this time of year, the forecast is really only accurate about 3 to 4 days out at max. So we know the weather's going to be nasty Tuesday and Wednesday, really mainly Tuesday. So I would get out on the water if you can Monday, or wait until Wednesday if you're, Wednesday is still pretty chunky. Thursday probably, really best weather Friday, Christmas Eve. And then over Christmas weekend looks gorgeous and into early next week. So that's what you're looking at weather-wise. Big disturbance on the way Tuesday. Little cooler temperatures, little reprieve from this humidity. And those fish going to get excited, going to get happy. That cooler weather definitely starts them moving around. So let's wake y'all up a little bit, and we're going to give away our first free trip of the night. Then we're going to get into questions for Jamin, Vereen here about slow pitch jig fishing. And most of them are my questions to get started because I'm interested in learning too. But if you have a question, you can always text in your question to that phone number right below here. Text your question in to get it answered live during the show. All right, so let's see who won our first free trip of the night. We're going to give away a 10-hour all-day. 10-hour all-day, that is a $109 value this year. Let's see who won a 10-hour all-day for two guests. $218 value on the certificate. Mark Toncray. I'd say Toncray. What do you think?
Toncray, yeah. Toncray.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right, Mark, you are the lucky winner from Michigan. Make sure you text in your full home address to that phone number right there. That's how you claim that free trip. If you don't text in your full home address to that phone number within 5 minutes, you don't get the free trip. That proves you're watching live. So make sure, if you're Mark Toncray, you text in your full home address to that phone number. All right, let's get into some questions, man. So we've got some new slow pitch gear in our shop, thanks to you. We brought in a full line of Temple Reef rods and reels, and we have them listed on our online store if you want to check them out. If you go to the shop.hubbardsmarina.com or go to hubbardsmarina.com and click store and then Marina store, you can find them. Josh just dropped the link into the comments for you on the live show. We have a whole slow pitch jigging section under the rods section of our online store. And the Temple Reef rods are specifically formulated for slow pitch jigging. And Jamin helped specifically pick out the rods you recommended for our area and our trips based on their ratings, because slow pitch jig rods aren't rated by strength, they're weighted by grams.
Yep.
And that's the gram of the jig, right?
Correct.
So when you're using those rods and picking out one of those rods, you'll want to pick out a rod that's going to match the gram jig you're fishing with.
Correct.
So how do you determine what gram jig to choose or what rod to choose? How do you know what grams work best?
Well, the rule of thumb is basically every gram for every foot, basically. So if you're fishing 100 feet of water, you want to be somewhere around 100 grams.
Okay. Oh, that's easy. So for every foot of water, you want a gram of weight. So if I'm fishing 40, 60, 80 foot, I'm using 40 to 80 gram jigs.
Correct.
That's pretty easy. And then I've also heard you want to try to stay as horizontal as possible. So if I'm fishing 100 foot, I would start with a 100 gram jig, but if the current's running really strong, then
move up. Yeah.
you'd want a heavier jig.
Correct. Or
So
you
you
could
really
change
want
the
a
different
variety.
types of jigs, yeah. There's different types of jigs that cut the current just a little bit.
Okay.
A longer, slender one's going to cut the current a little bit better.
Okay.
Shorter, fatter ones are going to fall a little bit slower.
Okay, so shorter, fatter fall slower, longer, slender fall quicker, and fight the current a little better. So if I'm fishing in 100 foot, using about a 100 gram jig, and then if the current's running really strong and there's too much of an angle in my line away from the tip of my rod, I'd either go to a heavier jig, or I'd use a jig that's different, longer, more slender, that's going to cut through the water better and stay more vertical.
Yep, keep you vertical.
Why do you want to be more vertical?
Same way when you're bottom fishing, you want to keep your line as close, just under you as much as possible.
So you feel the bite better?
Yeah. Well, you'll feel the bite better. You'll be able to manipulate the jig a little bit easier, I would say.
So the further it gets, or the more angle you have, the more bow in your line, the less control over the jig you have.
Correct. It's kind of like the Muppets with the, like if you have a Muppet under you,
Okay.
it's going to move a little bit easier if it's right under you. If you have a little bit of line out to the side, you're not going to be able to move the arms or the head or anything.
You know how I know you have a kid? Jamin has a beautiful baby girl, just over a year old. So we are both going through that infant stage in our lives, and that's hilarious. The Muppet, that was I understood exactly where you're coming from now. So you definitely want to try to stay as vertical as possible, use about a gram for every foot of water. And why do you want to spend money on one of these Tempo Reef rods? What is the difference between a slow pitch rod and one of those Bull Bay Hubbard's Marina rods we already carry? What's the benefit of a slow pitch rod?
The benefit of the slow pitch rod is if you get bored of just dropping down a bait every single time, you've got a light rod in your arm, and it gives you the option to manipulate your bait however you want it to go.
So when you say that, though, like the Bull Bay rod that we recommend and we fish heavily for dead bait and live bait, it's not going to work the jig the same way a slow pitch jig rod is.
Because you're looking for the recoil on the rod to pop the jig up, and it's going to shoot it out, and it's going to...
So the recoil is what changes a rod from a typical just bait fishing rod to a slow pitching rod.
Yes, because if you just pull up your rod and it's just going straight up and down, the jig's just going to move up and down like this. Once you get that pop, it's going to shoot out. And then
So you control the recoil by moving your arm left to right or up and down.
Yep.
And that's what makes the slow pitch jig rod so special, is because it has that recoil action and you're able to manipulate it better because it's so light.
Yes.
All right. How did you get into slow pitch jig fishing?
It happened on a few years back on your 12-hour extreme. We were in, I think, red snapper season, and the bite was a little bit slow, and I figured I'd drop down a jig, and I pulled up a gag. On the second pitch, basically, pulled up a gag, and then 2 minutes later, I dropped the jig back down, pulled up another gag. No one else on the trip was catching gags, and 2 in a row.
So you had brought out with you a slow pitch rod, a slow pitch reel, a slow pitch jig?
Yes.
Okay, so you had already bought the stuff and were just kind of getting into it, and then when you tried it, you were like, "Holy cow, this works really well."
That's when you dive into it, and
So you had dipped your toe in the water,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you went deep into the deep end.
Yes.
Well, how did you learn more about it?
YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of information out there with Johnny Jigs, Jig Pro. They just teach you a lot of stuff, and then trial and error, going out there and practicing.
No substitute for trial and error, for sure.
Yeah.
So Johnny's Jigs is one of the companies that we actually brought into our shop through the help of Jamin, and great guys. They do have some great videos, and they do a lot of slow pitch jig fishing. They're out of Hollywood, Florida, down there, Fort Lauderdale area, East Coast, southeast coast of Florida. And they do a lot of deep drop fishing around that area, around the Keys, around Pulley Ridge, and then even up in our area around the middle grounds. And we are doing a slow pitch jigging trip with them in 2022 at some time. They're actually going to join us on the show January 9th. The guys from Johnny's Jigs will be on the show, so I'm excited about that. Talk to them a little bit too. So they have a lot of, they got started on YouTube, I think, right?
Yep.
All right, so they have a big YouTube channel with a lot of stuff, and I know Benny Ortiz has been on the show, and he talked a lot about it. He's got some YouTube videos out there, too. So there's a lot of different ways, avenues for you to learn more. We have, through the help of Jamin, planned a trip January 11th on the Flying Hub 2. We are going out there to do a slow pitch jig fishing trip only, and we're going to bring our camera guy from Simply Affordable Marketing, Cameron Richardson, C.A. Richardson's son, the camera specialist we have on our team, and he's going to come out and hopefully get Jamin and some of the other experienced jig fishermen out there talking a little bit about jig fishing on the water and filming y'all how to do it, plus filming this novice trying it for his first time, and I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't go into the deep end too quickly, but we'll see. I feel like I'm already in the deep end. I think we spent we spent a lot of money, and we already got a full line of Temple Reef rods. I called Johnny's Jigs. I got probably, I think, 12 or 15 different jigs in different colors and sizes. We got split ring pliers, split rings, assist hooks. We got all the slow pitch stuff that we need. And then we ordered Daiwa Saltiga 15, 20, 25, and 30s.
My favorite reel.
And then the Daiwa Saltist, I think 15, 25, and 30 too.
Yeah.
All single speed, all very small, compact, really cool reels, and we're going to be bringing those into the shop. And then we're working on getting with Accurate on some of their reels, potentially some others as well. So we'll have a full line of slow pitch rods, slow pitch jigs, and slow pitch reels, and then the assist hooks, split ring pliers, all that kind of stuff too. So you're going to be able to get stocked up and ready to rock and roll right at the shop. And Jamin's actually offered to help us kind of write some articles, some how-tos for our website as well. So going to be building out a slow pitch jigging section of the website, I guess. So exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your help.
Yeah, no problem.
And also, what's your favorite reel? You said you kind of alluded to it already.
My favorite reel is the 35N. It's a narrow Saltiga, Daiwa Saltiga. That's my favorite reel. It's got a 5:1 gear ratio. And that's the smoothest reel for me when I'm out there.
So I just met with the Daiwa Saltiga, or Daiwa rep for our area, and they didn't have any ends. All the new line of Saltigas were just H's. They were all the high speeds.
High speed ones, yeah.
So they're like, I think either 5-1 or 6.2 to 1. 6 to 1, yeah. But there was no narrows. I didn't see them anymore.
Mine's probably an older model.
I got you. Yeah. That's cool though. The 35. Well, the big thing that caught my eye was the 15. I think it's 15, 20, and 25, or either 15 and 25. Had like 22 pounds of drag, and then the 35 was significantly heavier because it was a larger reel, and it only had maybe, I think it was like 7-8 pounds more drag. But when you're talking 22, 25 pounds of drag and a 15 series reel, which is super narrow, super small, super light, that to me seems like enough drag if I'm only using, I mean, most of the time on these slow pitch jig reels, you're using how heavy a braid?
20 to 30 pound, I would
At
suggest.
most.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're using 30-pound braid at most, 25 pounds of drag seems like enough in a reel.
Yeah, you should never be using more than 20 pounds of drag. I mean,
Perfect.
10 to 12 pounds is probably what I use most of the time.
10 to 12 pounds. And that's mind-blowing to me because I've seen people, the biggest gag grouper that was caught, I don't think it was this year, I think it was last year, was like almost 50 pounds, and it was caught on a slow pitch jig rod setup.
Yeah.
And it's like, goes against everything I've ever known about fishing.
That's the best part about it.
Yeah.
Even the fish that you're not expecting to eat, they react to it. And when you're fishing for the gags, they're coming out of their rock, they're coming out of their hole, they're coming up and hitting. And it gives you a little bit of advantage from the head start to
because they're not right up under their hole. Like if you're fishing the bottom, right on the bottom of the big live bait, he's right next to his rock when he comes out and eats.
Yep.
Whereas this jig is getting that fish to come up off the bottom, out of his hole,
Correct.
away from that structure, and that's what gives you that extra advantage to hopefully get lucky and not lose your jig to a big gag.
You typically don't lose them on grouper. If the mackerel are running, then that's typically when you're losing your jigs.
Because they hit them and they're falling all funky, and that's when they come up and crack it and bite through the leader.
Yep.
Interesting. Mackerel are your downfall, huh? What about wahoo? That seems like a wahoo would take it.
I've seen people catch them. I haven't got one, but...
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. A wahoo on one of those baby slow pitch reels.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got enough braid.
Yeah.
That's when a 35 would be a little better than a 15, I guess.
Yeah.
I'd be thumbing the heck out of that reel to slow that wahoo down. So what's your favorite rod?
My favorite rod that I've used probably the most is the Innovate, the Temple Reef Innovate. It's 8 feet. There's a few different models. Especially on your boat, it gives you a little bit more room. If you have a grouper coming under the boat, it gives you a little bit more advantage to keep the line away from the bottom of the boat.
We do have the Innovate.
Yep.
So the Innovate is the one that that Benny Ortiz formulated for party boat fishing, right?
Yep, just for party boats.
And that's because it's longer, it gets it further away from the boat, and it gives you more control over the jig.
Yep, and it gives you a greater advantage for the long fall as well.
For the long fall.
Like if you're doing a long pitch, basically, gives a little bit more fall time for the jig, because you're going to get most of your...
Because your throw of the rod is greater because it's longer?
Yeah.
You're getting too technical now. This is 101, dog. So long fall and short fall, there's different heights. Basically, you mean, so like if I'm jigging, there's like the speed jigging where you're just moving the rod tip just a little bit, maybe 20, 30 degrees. Yeah. And you're talking a long fall is when you might move the rod 100 degrees or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah.
And so would you use different jigs for that short fall versus long fall?
You can use them for each one. Each jig is going to move different depending on how far you pitch it.
So you could use the same jig and different action of the rod is going to make it move differently.
Yes.
So you could take one jig and hook up assist hooks different ways. Like you could put the assist hooks on the top of the jig, bottom of the jig, or both. Yeah. You can work it short fall, which is, again, just moving the rod tip just a little bit, or you could work it long fall, which is moving the rod tip a lot more. Yeah. And all those things are going to make that jig work differently.
Each jig's going to have its specific pattern, but in that process, that might jig it out or slide it out a little bit farther and give it a little bit more distance.
So you basically, to me, it's sounding more and more like inshore fishing for trout, redfish, or snook. If I'm working a DOA shrimp over the flat, some days they might hit it on the fall, some days they might hit it on the jig, some days they might work it a little bit faster if the water's warmer. On colder days, they might want it a little slower, dragged a little more steadily along the bottom. So it's the same thing offshore for slow pitch jig fishing, some days that short fall, just moving the rod tip a little bit, or some days they might want that long fall, or some days they might want assist hooks top and bottom, which would create more drag and make that jig work a little differently.
And you mix them all together.
This is getting more and more complicated, man. You're losing me. So you could take the same jig and work it for 30 minutes different ways, and then if it works, you then replicate that over and over again.
You're trying to figure out which the fish want, basically, at that point.
So if you were to go out fishing and you've got a tackle box full of jigs, different colors, different sizes, different assist hooks, and you're going to target X, Y, or Z species, how long would you work a jig before you're like, this isn't working, I'm going to try a different technique?
Maybe 2 or 3 drops. So probably like 5 to 10 minutes.
So 5-10 minutes. So 2 or 3 drops. You drop it all the way to bottom to start?
Yeah.
Drop it all the way to bottom to start, jig it for a while, reel up a couple cranks, jig it for a while, reel up a couple cranks, jig it for a while, and then once you see it, you crank it all the way to the surface and drop it back down, right?
Yep.
And then you do that 3 times.
Well, you try to work the bottom the whole time. So you might come up a little bit to the middle column, and then you'll drop it back down.
Okay, so when you say 3 drops, I drop it all the way to the bottom, work it a few times, reel up a little bit, work it a few times, reel up a little bit, work it a few times, and then drop it all the way to the bottom again.
Yep.
Then work it a few times. You might reel up once or twice or 3 times.
Yeah.
And then after 10, 15 minutes of doing that, rinse and repeat, then you're going to switch jigs or switch methods?
Switch jigs, probably.
Okay, so in those 3 drops, you're trying short fall, long fall,
Yep.
and those different actions, whether you're moving the rod tip to the side or not.
Yep.
And if it works, you try to replicate what you just did to get that fish to bite. If it doesn't work, you reel all the way up and then reset.
Yes.
Interesting.
And for our fisher, you really just want to work that bottom column. You might come up 30 feet and drop right back down. You don't have to reel it all the way up all the time.
Okay. Because you don't have bait on your hook, so there's no reason to check your bait.
As long as you feel the jig, you know you got your
all right. Interesting. So some of the comments, beginning and end of every spot. So that would be true if you're anchor fishing. So if you're anchor fishing, definitely the very beginning and very end of each spot is the prime time to slow pitch jig fish. But we're talking about doing slow pitch jigging trips. And then in those trips, we would only be slow pitch jig fishing. So we would be either drift fishing or holding up on these spots. And that would then eliminate that. You would then be slow pitch jig fishing the whole trip.
Yeah.
Because we're drifting over areas that are going to be holding these fish. And if anybody would ever call me back, we'd have 2 spot locks GPS trolling motors on the front of the flying hook too. But unfortunately, it's very tough to get a call back. I'm trying to spend money and these companies won't call me back. It's very frustrating. So how, what's your favorite? So how do you set it up? We talked about the reel, Daiwa Saltiga, everybody's favorite. And we talked about the rod, the Temple Reef Innovate. We've talked about kind of the basics. But how do you set it up?
So you're going to have your jig. You're going to have assist hooks on both sides most of the time. You're going to have a split ring that's attached to the assist hooks. And you're going to attach that assist hook, the assist hooks to a barbell, barbell and swivel.
What do they call it? So they have a barrel swivel. And then they have a, dang it, I can't think of the name all of a sudden. Not a barrel swivel, but the one, ball bearing swivel.
Ball bearing swivel, yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
So you want to use a ball bearing swivel, right?
Yes.
So a ball bearing swivel, so you have fluorocarbon to a ball bearing swivel to an assist hook, ball bearing swivel goes to a split ring, and on that split ring is your jig and an assist hook.
Correct.
And then on the jig at the bottom, you're also adding an assist hook as well.
I do.
Okay.
Makes it a little bit easier for you to bring up those fish.
Do you always have an assist hook on the top and bottom?
I do, yes.
And you never change that?
I stopped. I ventured it, but once you lose a couple jigs to the kinks, you don't want to risk it.
Because that's what I've heard from some people is you can put an assist hook on the top of the jig, on the bottom of the jig, or you could put it on the top or the bottom, and then that's going to change the action of the bait. And then you're getting super complicated because then you're talking short fall, long fall, top rigged assist,
So if
bottom
I was
rigged assist.
if I was gonna rig it with just one assist hook, I'd put it on the top.
Always on the top.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you prefer on the top and bottom.
Yes.
And so that assist hook is going to need a split ring on the top and bottom, right?
Yes.
Okay. So line to line knot to fluorocarbon to ball bearing swivel to split ring. On that split ring is an assist hook, a jig, and then on the bottom of the jig is a split ring and an assist hook.
Yes.
So for every jig, you need 2 split rings, two sets of assist hooks, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on your fluorocarbon leader, how long of a leader would you use?
I typically use 10 to 12
10 to 12 feet.
Yeah, 10 to 12 feet.
And so these jigging rods have super small guides. So 10 to 12 feet, that's a lot. So that line to line knot has to go through your guides.
Correct.
So you need a super small profile knot. What's your favorite line to line knot?
I personally tie the FG knot. That's my favorite. But you'll see the FG, you'll see the PR knot.
The PR bobbin knot.
Those are the 2 most common ones.
That's a tricky one. You need a PR bobbin tool. You need a bobbin tool, and you need a lot of practice. There's a video on how to tie it on our website, the PR bobbin knot, but I still really don't.
Yeah, some people use the Alberto knot. I've seen people use that as well.
The Alberto knot. Yeah. I like the reverse Albright or the Albright knot. That's in my opinion.
Whatever knot you're comfortable with. I would say that because you're going to be using 30-pound braid, so typically 50-pound leader. So whatever you're comfortable.
So always 50-pound leader?
I use 50 majority of the time. If I come down to like your 10 hour, I might go down to 40.
Okay. I would have assumed that you use 30-pound leader as well.
Sometimes on the 10 hour, if the bite's slow, I'll go down to 30. But typically I'll just go down to 40 because it's still a reaction. It's a reaction bite.
Reaction, so that it doesn't necessarily matter as much the diameter of the leader.
Not as much, not in that.
All right. So 50-pound leader, 30-pound braid, or 25-pound braid.
Yeah.
Unless you're like super deep water jig fishing, then I've heard them use as light as like 8-pound braid.
Yeah, when they're going for tile fish, they'll use a lot lighter.
Tile fishing 800 foot.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So a majority of the fishing we do on our trips from 40, 50 foot up to 300, 350 foot, you're going to be using 30-pound braid, 50-pound leader, and a jig size of anywhere from
probably 100.
40.
Yeah, 40 on the 10-hour trips, 40. I'd probably go 60, 80, 100 on your 10-hour trips. And then when you're on your deeper trips, it can be anywhere from probably 150 to 250, I would say max, depending on how the currents are out in the deeper water.
And if the current's running strong, you might want as much as a 350-gram jig.
But then that's when you can switch your jig type to the long, slender ones, and it'll get down there a little bit faster.
Still using a 200-gram jig.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Favorite lure style? So you've talked about the long, slender. You've talked about the shorter and fatter. Long, slender, cut through the current better. Shorter and fatter have more of a flutter, slower fall, but need to be heavier to combat current. So what would be your favorite lure style if you took current out of the mix?
My favorite is going to be the short, fatter ones for our grouper. They fall a little bit slower, gives them a little bit more time to react to the jig.
So the slowest fall jig is what you want to use if current isn't an issue.
Yes.
And then if current's an issue, would you use that shorter, fat jig in a heavier size, or would you go to that longer, slender jig?
I go to a longer, slender jig.
Okay.
If I only had the same 1 or 2 jigs, I'd stick to that.
Okay. Interesting. And then my next question was about this assist hooks. Would you use top or bottom or both? And you already answered that. You said you always do assist hooks on top and bottom.
Yeah.
And that to me seems kind of like logical.
Yeah.
Why would you not have them on top and bottom?
Well, the benefit is too, if you hook into a big gag grouper, you not only hooked him in the mouth, but you hooked him on the side, and he's not going to be swimming in his normal swimming pattern that
Exactly.
he'd be going.
And those big gags rock you up real easy, but if you have a hook in his lip and a hook on the side of the fish, he doesn't have as much area to move his body and really fight you as hard. Yeah. So to me, the double assist hooks kind of seems like a no-brainer. What size line do you use? We already covered that. And length of leader, 8 to 12 foot. Why would you use a longer leader versus a shorter leader?
If you know you're in some structure and you know you're going for gag group or something that has a pretty high chance of rocking you.
So bigger structure, like if you're fishing a wreck,
yeah,
or a big ledge,
yeah,
or if you're on a 39-hour and we're fishing those big peaks, you would use a longer leader because there's a chance that might come into contact with some of that bottom structure, and that gives you more abrasion resistance.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Interesting. Josh, have we had any questions from viewers for Jamin and slow pitch jig fishing? So Michael asked, how do you pick the correct size braid for slow pitch jig fishing? So if you necessarily weren't fishing our trips, how would you go about picking the right size braid for your trip?
It would depend on the depth that you're going. I would say 30 pound is going to be probably the staple in most of the slow pitch jigging that everyone's using is 30 pound.
But if you're fishing
deep water, you're going to want to go down to 20.
So if you're fishing beyond 300 foot to like 500 foot, you'd want to use 20.
Yes.
And then beyond like 5 to 600 foot, you'd want to use 10?
I haven't gone down that low, but there's people that are using 14, 10 pound.
That's crazy. That's
I normally have two setups. I have one with 30 and one with 20.
One with 30.
One reel with 30 and one reel with 20.
And that's because if you encounter higher
currents, I can just switch my rod out and already have a jig ready for that.
For that higher current.
Yeah.
So the lighter diameter braid is going to cut through the water better and perform better in higher current situations.
Yeah.
Even on a 10-hour trip, you would use 20-pound test?
Yeah, I'd use 20. I use 30 for the most part on those because we're not really in that deep of water.
And you don't run into current.
And you're not running into current. So it's
so
not that
really
big.
More like 39 hours where you'd want to have one set up with 30 and one set up with 20.
Yes.
Okay. So 10-hour, 30-pound across the board, no problem. If you're fishing beyond 100 foot, 100 to like 250 foot, that's when you might want to have one with 30, one with 20.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you'll see lots of the guys that are slow pitch jigging will just go to the 20 altogether because they're confident in their knots and they kind of know when it's going to break and not going to break. Because I primarily use 20 for the most part now on almost all my trips.
Baller. I'm going to start with 30. Because already 30 pounds seems extremely light for me. Yeah. But if you're using a reel, like the Saltiga 15 or 25 that I ordered, it's only got 22 pounds of drag. So having 20-pound braided line makes sense because you're not going to be max drag on these little reels very often. So that means you can use 20 pound and you're not going to break it if you know what you're doing with that line-to-line knot. So I see your point.
Yeah.
Just change is hard. Going from fishing 100, 125 for a big gag grouper to 30 pound is a little bit mind-blowing.
And you're not forcing them up, you're guiding them up too. It's not like you're pumping. Same thing when you're bottom fishing. You don't want to be pulling and trying to high stick the fish up. You want to just reel.
It's all about finesse.
Yeah.
So you're just keeping that pressure on the fish.
Yeah. And
hoping he doesn't take you to his rock.
Yes.
All right. Learning something new. Charles said, I have the Saltiga 40A. It's a 5-to-5 or 5.1 to 1 ratio. Can I use that reel for slow pitch jig fishing?
Yeah, you can use it. The reason why you want the narrow one is because it's going to feel a little bit better in your hand. It's keeping the whole tackle outfit light, and then you don't have to worry about the level line. it's going to all come in there.
True. So the level wind, you don't have to worry about that because it's so narrow.
Yeah, it's so narrow, it's already going back and forth. And if anything, you just turn your reel a little bit, and it'll go back to the other side.
And if it's wider on one of those bigger reels, then you have to worry about it, and you have to guide it with your thumb more.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So you really want either a very small reel or a bigger reel like 35 and 40 and narrow.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Are those smaller single-speed Saltigas you ordered star drag? Yes. So for slow-pitch jig fishing, you don't need a 2-speed reel because you don't need a downshift to that lower gear ratio to horse these fish up. This is all about finesse. The rod is super light. It's like thinner than the diameter of my pinky. They're super skinny, so you don't need to go to low gear ratio to horse this fish in. So single-speed reels and high gear ratio is really what you're looking for these slow pitch jig reels. So yes, they're all star drag because of that. Some of them are lever drag just because that's what they like. Do you have a preference?
I prefer star drag.
For
That's just because if you do hook a king or you do hook a tuna or something, I feel like you have a little bit more opportunity to adjust your drag compared to trying to put down the lever and try to adjust your drag.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I always prefer a star drag, always. But with these 2-speed reels, you don't have an option. You got to go lever drag because they don't make a 2-speed in star drag yet.
No.
It's 2021. We have all this technology in the world, and they can't make a 2-speed star drag. Very frustrating. If the COVID thing didn't happen, I would be really upset with Iowa at this point because I've been asking about that for 5 years now. But we'll get there eventually. Trust me. Can you use a Zebco 33 for slow pitch jig fishing? Epic question. What other questions do we have, Josh? Does the Innovate have enough backbone to lift rod during the fight? Older ones point straight down and reel only.
So it's got enough backbone, but the whole point is not to bring the pole up. Once you hook onto a fish, it's going to sit under your armpit, and you can just keep it basically horizontal from right there. You don't need to be pulling it up and down. You just want to keep it right there, and if it starts pulling drag out, you just point your rod down.
Okay, so you're never trying to lift up on the rod. You're just reeling.
Yes.
When the fish relents, you're putting pressure on them by reeling.
Yes. You can set the hook like bass fishing in the beginning. Once you set the hook, you can whip it if you want, but I wouldn't be trying to do it throughout the whole fight.
I got you. So you can put the horses to him when he bites or when you feel him, reel it tight, and then once he's hooked up, you're just steady cranking.
Yeah, just go leave it under your armpit and just reel. You don't want to bring it up here.
Don't put it on the rail.
Yeah.
Don't put it on the rail. Don't try to horse it. Just steady crank them. I got you.
Can you imagine
Could I imagine what?
putting it on the rail?
I could see people doing it. I've seen crazier, Josh.
I feel like a snap.
What size hooks? Single or treble?
I don't use treble, I use single. And typically 3/0 is the size. If you're going on a 10-hour, I'd go down to a 1/0. Because you want to match it with your jig size too. You don't want a 3/0 hook or 4 of those on a jig that's this big.
Where were you when I ordered the assist hooks, man? I ordered, I think, 3, 4, and 5/0 assist hooks, and all assist hooks are going to be just simply J hooks, and you can use J hooks legally because the rule is when you're offshore fishing with natural bait, that's when you have to use J hook or circle hooks, inline non-stainless circle hooks. But when you're jig fishing, you can use J hooks. So all the assist hooks that I'm familiar with, at least, are J hooks, and they call scissor assist hooks. So they're 2 J hooks that sit in a triangle and they kind of come together. So they scissor out, and it basically becomes a treble hook, but without one part of the treble. It's a double treble.
Double assist hooks on both sides.
Yes. Yeah, so it's 2 hooks, and it's a set of assist hooks is what they kind of call it. Interesting. So double J assist hooks, 1/0 on a 10-hour, And how would you determine the size hook to your jig?
Just the size of the jig, because if you have double assist hook on a jig that's this big, your hooks are going to take up most of the space of the jig. So you want it to kind of match.
And you don't want your hooks to obviously touch each other, because then they're going to get tangled.
Correct.
So you want enough space in between them. So 1/0, if you're using like a 40, 50, 60 gram jig, then maybe 2 or 3/0 if you're using 80 to 120 gram.
Yep.
And then 120 gram above, you're using like 5, 6/0.
Yep.
All right, so you got to match the hook to the size bait, just like if you were dead bait fishing.
Yeah.
Son of a sailor, that's pretty logical. That makes sense. All right, now I'm following you. I'm back on the boat. Any other questions, Josh?
There's a few. They're all repeating themselves, though.
Have you slow pitch jig fished in less than 60 foot of water, and what brand rod do you like? Yes, I mean, you've talked about it quite a bit.
Reef. Yeah, I've been using the Temple Reef, but yeah, I do it all the time on the 10-hour trip.
Yeah. So he primarily fishes the 10-hour trip with us, and he always brings the slow pitch jig fishing rods. And that's what kind of made me question it, because everything that I've heard is you do that when you're at 100 foot of water or more on average, and you've really been focusing on it in 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 foot of water.
Yeah. Because you know the grouper are there.
And you've been catching them?
Yeah.
On slow pitch jig reels. And I heard that from Frank, that on one of the trips you were the only people catching grouper, you and your dad, using those slow pitch jigs and slow pitch jig rods.
Yeah.
And
like
everybody
Frank
else
said on the last show, he wouldn't drop it by the rock. That's when I run over by the person and drop the jig by the rock, because I know the grouper is there.
And you caught him.
Yeah.
And didn't get rocked up.
I probably never get rocked up.
Probably never. That's crazy.
I get cut off by kings. That's my problem.
All right. Interesting. What weight Temple Reef rod is most versatile?
For our fishery, anything from 100 to 300 grams.
100 to 300 grams. All right. Innovate. The Innovate series is basically 100 to 300 grams, I think.
Yep, 100 to 400.
All right. Yeah, we got them on our website. So we have the Grand Crew, the Project X, and the Innovate. Project X is acid wrapped.
Correct.
The Grand Crew will fit any size reel and can even be used for bait fishing. Kind of like a hybrid rod, right?
Yeah, I would still stick to slow pitch jigging with it. I don't know if I would go that far, but
It's kind of more of a hybrid. I got a little bit more backbone to it, and then the Innovate's kind of a true slow pitch jig rod.
It's more of it's in the middle kind of. It's a hybrid, I would say.
Hybrid. Yeah. So the Innovate could be used for bait fishing too.
I would use it for that.
You called it a hybrid.
Yeah. Hybrid between long fall and then your traditional slow pitch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're getting there. And one thing that's very interesting to me on this whole deal is they're all two-piece.
Yeah.
They're all two-piece. I didn't know that until he brought me the rods I purchased. I'm like, they're all two-piece. And he's like, yeah, that's how it is. I didn't know that until they showed up. So that was pretty interesting. You never know. You never know until you try it.
Well, it's not the same two-piece that we had back in the day where the two-piece was built in the middle of the rod. These are either butt joint or they're going to be, like on the Innovate, it's a 70-30. Mm-hmm. So you've got that backbone from the bottom.
Yeah, that's true. It is a little different, and that's to prevent the rod breaking, giving it better action.
Yep.
And that was interesting to me that they are two-piece to a point, not really true two-piece rods that kind of meet right in the middle of the rod. All right, it is time to give away another free trip. Let's give away a free 5-hour half day for 2 guests. Let's see who won that free 5-hour half day for 2 guests. Then we're going to get into all of your questions, even if they're not related to slow pitch jig fishing. Try to rip through those before the end of the show. John Fisher, is there going to be a live stream the day after Christmas on Sunday the 26th? The answer is no. That's Josh's birthday, and it's Christmas weekend. So we are going to take Christmas weekend off. We will be back for the live show on, let's see here, January 2nd. So January 2nd will be live. Next weekend, December 26th, we will not be live because it is Christmas weekend. So Christmas weekend, no radio show, no live show, radio silence. I will do my Fox 13 segment Friday morning, but nothing Saturday morning on the radio and nothing Sunday night for the live show. Gonna focus on the family next weekend. It's been a busy weekend this weekend. We had our Regulars Club party yesterday afternoon, and today we had our company Christmas party. So I have not seen my family since Wednesday, basically. So definitely need to focus on that next weekend and enjoy Christmas. So no live show December 26th. Great question. A two-piece rod comes to you with a point of failure. Yes, that is true, Harry Smith. If it's a two-piece rod that meets 50-50, meaning half the rod and half the rod, it's two-piece. These are different two-piece rods, like you were saying. It's either butt joint, so it's just the handle of the rod, and you put the rod into the handle, which you're never going to bend at the handle. The backbone's going to start well above the handle, so you don't really have to worry about that. Or it's a 70-30, where only 30% of the rod is actually the bottom half, basically the handle and the first guide, and then it becomes a two-piece. So it's split up differently than your average two-piece. Generally, I would say, yeah, two-piece isn't a good idea. But in this setup, you're not horsing the fish. Like Jamin said earlier, you're finessing the fish. So this two-piece setup works really well because it's not 50-50, it's 70-30, or it's a butt joint. So a little different style of fishing. Don't knock it till you try it. And I've been knocking it for a while, so I guess it's time to try it. We're gonna try it January 11th. Terrence Luckett said, "Have you used any Shimano flat fall jigs?"
That's that jig that got me hooked into fishing.
Oh.
That's the jig that I caught the 2 gags on in the
That's
very
the
beginning.
jig that started it all.
Yeah.
So Daiwa SK is a Saltiga SK jig. That's a slow pitch jig. There's the Shimano flat falls. There's then there's a ton more. We are going to be carrying the Johnny's jigs, which we already carry now. We're working to get Oni Works.
Oni Works, yeah.
Oni Works, and then the other one is
Jig Pro.
Jig Pro. JYG Pro. Jig Pro. So Oni Works, Jig Pro, and Johnny's Jigs are what we're going to carry in our shop. And then we're working on potentially looking at more, but that's what we're starting with right now. Very interesting. All right, let's see. What other questions do we have? Josh, what makes slow pitch jig rod so strong? What makes them so strong?
The carbon
Carbon
fiber.
Carbon fiber. Special.
Carbon content on it. Yeah.
They're calling you out on your reusable cups.
Yep. We didn't want the red solo cups because they don't work so well with the beautiful background that we used here. So we use these aluminum reusable cups. And they're reusable disposable cups, which are kind of nice.
They're infinitely recyclable.
We're kind of saving the planet here, one show at a time. One whiskey at a time. Let's see. Love the show. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Do I need to buy a special rod and reel for slow pitch jigging, or can I start with the equipment I already have? That's for you, Jamie.
For the best action and the most success, yes, you need to buy a slow pitch setup. I was starting off with just a spinning reel, and it was the Shimano, one of the speed jigging ones. That's what I started off with.
Yeah.
and then I branched out.
Like the Penn Carnage rods in our shop, they're technically jigging rods. They're only like $120, so you can start with some of those speed jigging rods. They do make cheap versions of them, but Temple Reef is a true slow pitch jig rod, and that's when you start getting into that. I think the ones we carry, the cheapest ones, like 150, 180 retail.
I think it's 220.
220.
The Temple Reef Elevate.
So the Elevate 220, and then upwards of 300 if you get into that higher range. And then we're bringing in these new fancy Levitate Nabla series, which are almost 400, right?
No, those are 5 something, closer to 600.
Son of a sailor, it's going to cost me a lot of money. It's beautiful though.
Yeah.
So pretty, so pretty. Black with the gold grill.
I see it going bad for you, Dylan.
Oh yeah, I'm already seeing the dollar signs add up, but I'm excited.
It already sounds like your type of fishing. You know how you
No,
do
to
that
me,
fast action fishing. You've been dropping.
I was listening to the Real Animals radio show this morning, and it was really hitting home for me. It was Mike Mahoney was the host. Mike Anderson's hunting for jalapeno cheddar sausage up in the Georgia woods, and Big Ben Marshall was out. So it was Mike Mahoney and the Watts brothers. Watts brothers are famous redfish tour fishermen. They have a big, I think they either started or like had a foothold in Power Pole, and they were talking about how they were in the redfish tour forever. They had won countless tournaments. Like they're the household name of the redfish tour. The Watts brothers. They don't saltwater fish anymore. The last 3 years, they've been doing nothing but speck fishing and diving into how to catch specks, where to target them, when to catch them, even in the summertime where most people only fish for them in the wintertime. And they've been all about that freshwater speck fishing. And their illustration and their reason why was because it was a new type of fishing that caused them to start from the beginning and kind of learn something new. And so that to me is kind of why I'm a little interested in the slow pitch jigging game. Is bait fishing, bottom fishing, you can get to a point where you're like, all right, this is awesome, and then you want to help other people catch them, and then you get a lot of enjoyment watching other people learn how to catch them and get hooked on it. But at this point in my life, it's like, all right, I've been there, done that, and there's this new style of fishing I'm seeing that's working really well for the same species that I'm targeting. So I want to try it out.
That's why I've enjoyed Frank's 10 hour so much, because it's more automatic on the deeper that you go in the shallower. It gets a little bit more challenging for those fish. So the learning curve of trying to figure out what they want in shallower water is the reason why you see me out there so much on the 10 hour.
So you're experimenting in slow pitch jig fishing in shallower waters, which not a lot of people do.
No.
So that's why you like doing those 10-hour trips with those slow pitch jigs.
Yeah.
Is
Just
you're
keep on learning.
experimenting into an area that's not really been innovated as much.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's why I'm getting into it myself. Is just it's a new way of fishing, new style of fishing, starting from the bottom, learning more about it. So exciting. Let's see. We are almost out of time here. Let's see. Does slow pitch jig fishing work at night? That's a good question to end on.
I haven't been out at night. I've heard the bite slows down a little bit, but that's why they have glow jigs as well.
You haven't done a 39-hour like this? Mm-mm. Dude, we're going to have to change that, dog. All right, so we will let you know very shortly if slow pitch jig fishing works at night. But I know, like you said, there's a ton of glow jigs out there that really are popular for tuna fishing at night, on the rigs and stuff. And I would assume a snapper would be pretty excited by a glow-in-the-dark jig dropping down, fluttering through the water column. So that'll be interesting to try for sure. And we'll definitely get back to you on that as we get an opportunity to use that. And pulling up here, I think the one thing I wanted to mention before we drop off is, again, our slow pitch jigging trip coming up here January 11th. That's Tuesday, January 11th. It's an all slow pitch jigging trip only, so it's a great opportunity to get out there and learn a little bit more about this style of fishing and to try it your first time. And we are going to be doing some more of those through 2022. So we're probably going to start off with a few 12-hour extreme trips, kind of see how it goes if people get into it and interested in it. We're probably going to work with like Temple Reef or the guys from Johnny Jigs or Jig Pro or someone to put on potentially a 39-hour style trip to that 39-hour area just for jig fishing with limited loads, so it'll be pretty interesting to say the least, and I'm excited, and I appreciate your help getting me into it.
No problem.
All right, so we are going to be wrapping up the show now. We're at the end of our time frame. Don't forget to check out Fox 13 every Friday morning, 8:15 a.m. We're going to be doing that Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, don't matter. Every Friday morning, 8:15 a.m. Our Real Animals radio show is not live Christmas Day or New Year's Day. We're going to be live again. What's that? January 8th? Yeah, January 8th is our first live show of 2021 on the Real Animals radio show. That's every Saturday morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., except for Christmas Day and New Year's Day. And then live shows every Sunday night right here on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook and YouTube channel, except for next weekend, December 26th. The supporters after show is going to start at 9:50. So make sure you join us for that. If you're a supporter, if you're not a supporter, you can join right at the top of our Facebook page. Gives you access to the supporters after show, lots of behind the scenes information, captain and crew schedules, and much, much more. So make sure you check out the supporters group. It's only $4.99 a month, $4.99, cheaper than a cup of coffee, and you get a lot of cool information out of that. So think about it, maybe join it. The supporters after show will again start 9:50 p.m. And then big shout out to our sponsors. Again, Gator Gyms, 3301 Pinnell's Point Drive South. They brought you this live show tonight. They sponsor the live show. They are the title sponsor of the live show. So check them out right there, 3301 Pinnell's Point Drive South, exit 16 on 275 South. Also, our partners at the Real Animals and our sponsors, Yamaha, Garmin, Bass Pro Shops, Engel Coolers, Salt Strong, Aquatic Nutrition, Sport Fishing Chum, Cleanse Oil, and Bull Bay Rods. Garmin, new sponsor. Got some really cool stuff coming from Garmin. Super excited about that. Don't forget to check us out on Pinterest, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Just simply search Hubbard's Marina. And with that, it's time to find out who won our 39-hour fishing trip for one guest. That is a $399 value this year. It's a $449. I don't know. $399 this year. Let's see who won a 39-hour trip. We'll see you on the supporters after show at 9:50 if you want to join us. If you're a supporter on the supporters after show, that happens on the supporters group. Make sure you join it. If you're a supporter, Greg Benedus coming out this week. You just won a 39-hour trip. Congratulations, my man. You have to text us at that phone number right there within 5 minutes to prove you're watching live. That phone number, you got 5 minutes. Hopefully we'll see you soon here at Hubbard's Marina. Again, really appreciate you joining me tonight, Jamin, Vereen, and all your great information on slow pitch jig fishing. And we look forward to fishing with you January 11th on our slow pitch jig fishing only trip on the Flying Hub 2. And hopefully we'll see you guys there. And don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too busy. Thanks for watching tonight, guys. We'll see you January 2nd on our live stream show. Not next weekend, January 2nd. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.